Whoa, that's a bigger fish.
What's up, fellow fishing fanatic? This is the easiest method to use to catch a ton of fish. Today I'm at my pond and we fish it a lot, which means the fish are used to seeing lures and baits thrown at them all the time. And so whenever the fish get wise to all this, I like to use live bait. And my favorite live bait is worms. So today I'm gonna walk around my pond, tossing in some worms, catching bluegill, bass, maybe even a few catfish. Now I've got two things going against me today. Number one, it's already getting hot. It's the summertime here in Oklahoma and today's forecast is projected to be 100. So that means I don't have much time to fish. Number two is I'm limited on the number of casts I get. I get 50 casts in order to catch a fish, or I lose the option to use worms in the rest of this series for the year. I'm not too worried about it today because, like I said, worms are the easiest way to catch fish. But enough yip yapping, let's get to it.
All right, so I said we're using the easiest method today. That's worms. They stinking love worms. And I also mentioned that we might catch some catfish. So I brought my big catfish rod. I honestly haven't caught a catfish out of here in a very long time. So I don't even know if there's catfish still in here, but we're about to find out. For catfish, I want to use the whole worm because I'm just a fan of bigger bait, more bait, bigger fish. And for catfish, it just seems to work better that if you have more worm on there, then it's gonna work better. When I put the worm on there, I like to kind of slide it up on the hook, run it through the body a little bit, and then loop it back and forth for it. This helps it keep on the hook actually, instead of the fish coming and pecking. That's the worst thing about worms, is all the worm juice that you get on you. But it ain't nothing a little grass can't take care of. Alrighty. I'm just gonna launch that one out into the deep, out into the middle. We let it sink and tighten it up. Now we wait on that one, and while we wait, let's go get my other rod rigged up. So today I'm just using good old travel rod. That's what I like to just keep in the back of my truck. And if you actually have a interest in telescopic rods, travel rods in general, I've got a video that I'll leave linked right here just to help you pick the right one for you. I've tested several of them, and this one's honestly my favorite. It's the Kingswell, and it came with a little travel bag and a little protector and stuff. Pretty cool little setup. But if you want to learn more about it, I'll leave that video linked in the description as well. So I want, not my good hooks, but good enough. Do this. You know what? Before we rig it up with worms, since we've got that one going, I'm gonna toss this wacky rig around a little bit, just for the heck of it. Line that up. All right, we're good. Alrighty. Let's just see. Although that's cast number 2, I guess, technically, because I've got 2 rods going. So I'm not going to cast this one too many times. That way I save my cast and I don't lose this lure for the year. Because the wacky rig is a killer rig. And for those of you wondering how I'm going to keep track, my lovely editor John is going to help me keep track by putting all the number of casts on the screen. Oh, there's a bite. But we'll let it go. That was a terrible cast. As I'm sure you've noticed by the audio and the trees and the grass and everything, it is crazy windy out here today, which is really an average day in Oklahoma. So I'm gonna fish this wind-blown bank. If you've never seen one of my videos before, I like starting on the wind-blown side because that's where all the vegetation gets pushed up. Then the smaller fish follow, and it's just kind of cascading effect because eventually the big fish follow, and that's where a lot of them are going to hang out. All right, I'm gonna give it one more cast. honestly, the wacky rig's not a great rig to throw today because of the wind. Now I've got it weighted on there a little bit, so it helps, but I really don't like throwing a wacky rig when there's this much wind, just because the way they bite it, the way it's supposed to fall, the wind will affect it so much, and really it's just hard to fish in the wind. That was grass. All right. And there we go. Alrighty, let's say start at about a foot. That's a little more than a foot, but I think it'll do. So weird, these get smaller and smaller every year. So I know I'm going to be getting a lot of little pecks from bluegill, from other sunfish, probably even from little bass. So I'm going to hook it back and forth on itself like that. Like I said, it helps it stay on there a little better. The bluegill peck them to death anyways, so it's not like you're gonna get it to last for a while. Doesn't look like anything's on here. Let's tighten this line back up a little bit. There we go. I like that better. All right, I got it hooked on there. Nothing fancy. Got a bobber on. Let's see how hungry they are today. Now, because it's windy, I'm going to cast it out towards the middle a little bit more. I'm going to let it drift in to see where they are. I'm going to guess, just based on the time of day, where the sun's kind of at and everything, that they're actually going to be under this grass mat over here, or up against this grass line right in front of me. I don't think they're going to be hanging out in the middle, but there's also a brush pile out there that they might be hanging around. So we're going to find out. It is not floating the direction I thought it would. It's floating more towards me. There was a little fish that just surfaced right beside my bobber, but they ain't biting it. What the heck? We're actually getting into the area now where I think could get a bite. Oh, I missed it. So that tells me I'm probably too deep for as close as they are to the shore. So I'm going to drop my bobber down a few inches, which will raise my bait to about a foot like I thought it was said earlier. And I'm not going to cast out into the middle nearly as much. We're going to cast a little closer to that shore. See if we can't have the wind blow it to that shore and then reel it down this bank if we don't get a bite by then. I'm also trying to keep an eye on my other rod just down the bank. Hopefully I don't have to go sprinting and running and trying to grab it before it goes and gets lost into the water. But that might make for, you know, a good time. You also might notice that as this bobber drifts, it's going to come closer to me. It's going to move away or move to the side a little bit more. And I'm going to try to keep my line at least a little bit tight. You know, not super tight because that just pulls it right back to me. I want it to drift on its own, kind of let the wind blow it around. But I also don't want just a bunch of slack line in it, because when I do that, I have to reel down and then I end up missing fish because of it. So every now and then I just reel up a little bit of the slack. I try not to go tight line, but close to it. See, when I go tight line like that, it kind of takes the bobber under, and it usually scares a little bit of the fish if there was a fish coming to check it out. Oh, that's a bite. There's a bite. There's a bite. They're gonna take it. I think he's swimming. Oh, I pulled it out of his mouth. But you'll see right here what I'm saying. They literally just peck it and pull at it, and there's already a lot of worm gone simply because those little suckers. It's probably not a very big one. He's just sitting there pecking at it and sucking it off. As weird as that sounds, that's what he's doing. But I've been getting way more bites right here near the bank, so we're gonna keep tossing just real close. Look at that, already a bite. It's all about once you locate him, he's got it. He's swimming around with it, but I pulled it right out. Let's go get another worm. Where's that piece already pinched off? This. Let's go catch this little rascal. There's a bite. Pop that out of the weeds. Not really biting it. It's kind of pecking at it, which is typical of bluegill. That's my guess is what it is. Some kind of sunfish, bluegill. They'll be right here along the weeds hiding from bass, and then occasionally dart out, try to get their meal. It wasn't a good cast. It's kind of a wasted cast. Oh, that was fast. That's a good hit. Got him. Right there. Lost the worm, got the fish. But there you go. Now we're just racing the heat. Right there. That's why it's hard for them to get the hook in their mouth, is because they're about that big. Let's just take the worms with us this time. Just gonna walk them back and forth. I have yet to actually find a way to keep these worms on without the fish just taking them off almost instantly. You know, like I said, hooking them back and forth slows them down a little bit, but in all honesty, like, they're gonna figure it out, especially if it's in there for any length of time. They're just gonna peck at it, tear it off, whatever they gotta do to get it. So don't get focused on, oh, I've got to rig it this specific way to catch. You don't. Just make sure you're using the right hook size for the fish that you're targeting. So you'll notice that I used a bigger hook on the catfish rod, hoping that, you know, there's a little bit bigger fish going to come by and get that. Whereas I downsized a lot with this jig head so that these smaller bluegill can fit it in their mouths. Another one, little one pecking at it. And when I'm chasing these little bluegill like this, I still want to set the hook, but I'm obviously not setting the hook like I would on a bass or a catfish. It's usually just a little pop is all you need to get that hook through their mouth and start reeling them in. One big thing that is crucial, that's why I wouldn't stop getting bites. One big thing that's crucial is actually making sure that they bite it. You'll notice that there's a lot of these little pecks and it just kind of pops and moves. And I don't set the hook on those times unless it's just a lot of them and maybe I catch it and get lucky. Most of the time, I really actually want them to take this bobber under the water. And when it's under the water, that's when I'm gonna set the hook. So even though I caught a fish out of this spot already, you notice I'm already getting a few more bites in it. And that's because bluegill tend to school together. So if you get bites in one area, catch that fish, there's probably more, at least, you know, panfish wise, there's probably more in that area. Now, if you catch a bigger bass doing this, which I've done a lot, they probably left because the predator showed up. You know, it'd be like swimming at the beach and you're having fun, and then a shark shows up. Everybody's getting out of the beach until the shark leaves. So think of it the same way as you would, you know, while fishing. Sure, you might be getting a lot of bites, and then, hey, you catch a big bass. He's probably scared off all the other fish that you were catching. It's either time to move or switch tactics. Are you kidding me? They're getting smart. My biggest complaint about worms is just how easy it is for them to take it off the hook. I mean, worms are soft, they tear easy, and these fish are just smart. So if you notice that, hey, I was getting a lot of bites and then all of a sudden it stopped, reel it in and check, because more than likely they took your bait. Now, for those of you with kids, this is the best way to introduce kids, really to introduce anybody to fishing, because there's a lot of action going on. You notice that for every cast, I'm usually getting 1, 2, 3 bites. Now, they're not big bites by any means. You're probably not gonna catch your PB doing this, but like I said, I have caught pretty big bass doing this, and I've caught pretty big catfish doing this. So there's always that possibility. But more than likely, you're gonna catch bluegill like the one that I've caught and these little bites that are happening. There's a little better fish jumping. Whoa, that's a bigger fish. Oh, that was a bass. That was a bass. Gosh dang it. I tried to horse him in and I shouldn't have. But he ate tried to eat that little bit of worm. That is probably a 1.5 pound, 2 pounder. There's not a lot of big bass in here, but I stopped getting little bites and then that one came through. So just as I was saying, you might catch big fish. Right on cue, he bit. Silly me. Tried to horse him in and should have just let him fight. Knowing that that guy's in the area now probably means these bluegill went into hiding. So I'm gonna give it 1 or 2 more casts. If I don't get any more bites, it's time to move. We can come back later and see if they've moved back in, but more than likely they went into hide mode. Oh, that's another bass. That's definitely another bass. Yep, just like that. Whew, that is not in a good spot. That hook, give me a second, bud. Look at that. See? Not a giant bass, but a good bass. Fun little bass to catch on worms. Like I said, worms catch everything. Get you out of the grass. There you go. And that wasn't on very much worm at all. Now, as any good fisherman will tell you, that one was not as big as the one that got away. But it's still a fish, and I am happy to catch it. Oh, we're already getting another bite. That's a bluegill. Oh, that's actually a sunfish, I think. Yeah, I guess a bluegill is technically a sunfish. But yeah, there. Oh, it's a bluegill. You can see the pretty stuff. They're pretty little fish. Kind of surprisingly for how dirty this pond usually is. But he already got my bait, just like that. Man, little suckers. Now typically what happens, not always, but typically I catch the bigger fish out further away, just a little bit. You'll notice that both of those bass hit out just a little bit further, whereas I'm getting more smaller bites closer to the shore. Not always the case, and honestly it can be a matter of a few feet. You know, it's not always, oh, I've got to cast out to the middle of the pond to catch bigger fish. It could just be the big fish are 3 feet out farther than the smaller fish, waiting for them to stop paying attention or waiting for them to get hurt. Oh, I needed to reel up my slack because flat out missed that one. Oh, whoa, whoa. Oh, I pulled it out of his mouth. I think he took my bait with him. Yep. So one key to keeping these guys alive longer is, number one, always putting the lid back on. It dries out really fast, especially in the heat like today and the wind. So putting the lid back on as soon as you're done getting them, but also tearing off the same one that you keep tearing off. So if you're not putting the whole worm on there, try to find the one that you used last time. That way you're not breaking them and hurting them prematurely, and it actually, you know, eventually will kill them. Pretty good bite. Oh, I pulled it out of his mouth. The wind is blowing my line into the grass, getting it tangled up, making it difficult. Let's reel that in a little bit. So another thing you'll notice about where I actually set up was this corner. Corners are great in ponds, anywhere really that you want to fish, as the bigger fish will push the bait fish up into this corner, making them easier to target because they've got, you know, they limit the number of escape routes. Whereas if they're like out in the middle, the fish can swim anywhere and get away. Here, they've got to swim. They're blocked off on 2 big areas to get away. And so those predator fish know this, and they use these corners to attack them and make easy meals. I think it might be time to move. Get one more cast in over here. But that's the thing with, especially like these little panfish, they will move. Number one, like the big fish come in and scare them off. Number two, they just kind of roam around the pond. So you do have to kind of follow them. And to know when to move is when you just stop getting bites really quickly. You know, like that, it didn't take very long before I was already getting a bite. So they're probably moving off in that direction a little bit. And it's probably time for me to follow suit. You might have gotten my bait on that one. He did get my bait on it. Let's go check this other rod for the heck of it and move. Well, something pecked over it away. Only them stinking bluegill. There we go. Sink to the bottom. Tighten it up. Alright, I know I said one more cast, but one more cast. Oop. And something stole the bait. So since we're still getting bites right here, I am not gonna move quite yet. A little better bluegill or sunfish, what is it? Bluegill. Cool new lip piercing you can tell his buddies about. Another little bluegill. Let's get it right back in there. That was not where I got it. I think they have moved on because I haven't got a bite right there. Or I didn't have any bait. But there's another spot I want to try out. So, and I'm sure I'm going to get bit doing this because I'm going to leave my rod right here. And this is probably how I lose it, but maybe it'll be worth it. I don't know how it would be worth it, but it could. Alrighty, we are just on the other side now, facing back to where we were just fishing. Let's see if they've moved down this bank. I was getting bites on down this bank, so I think that's probably where they'll be. Plus there's a nice ledge of nasty moss and just grass and stuff that all those little fish use as cover. Oh, I'm not paying attention. Woo! Oh, it came off. What the heck? That's a pretty one. Flopping so I can grab you. Get that dirt off of you. That's a pretty one. Yeah. Biggest one of the day so far. And that is why it's important to always ensure that your line is not strung out everywhere because of the wind. I was very lucky to catch that one. The one trick to kind of slow down the wind taking your line and everything is to keep it as low to the water as possible, even laying it down along the water. Now you're still gonna obviously get the wind blowing your bobber to the bank, so you're still gonna have to adjust and reel in a little bit of slack, but this slows it down just enough where maybe you can keep up with a little better. Nope, but it got moss and grass all over it. Sometimes this happens, you just gotta take the moss off and throw it back out there. Honestly, like, you've got to keep it clean or the fish just won't bite it. They'll see that it's looking weird, and like I said, they're smart. They'll figure it out. All right, let's move on back to another corner. This stretch usually is pretty good, and it still might be good. But like I said, I just like corners. So I usually prefer to fish in the corner over down the stretch sometimes. But on a day like today, when the wind is blowing into the corner, it's definitely good to just focus on the corners. I'm not saying that they're not along this bank. I know that I've put rock piles in here. I've got stuff to attract fish, but I've also got brush piles in the corners. I've got rock piles in the corners and stuff too. And if the food is in the corners, guess where the bigger fish are going to be? In the corners. There's already a bite. No. That's surprising. Got him. See, they're getting bigger. Flicking him. Ow, he still got me. Another good one. Not bad. He would almost be big enough to eat. Almost. But this is just my fun pond to fish in. I ain't looking to eat today. So he's getting lucky. And he almost had all that worm off. Almost didn't get the lip piercing today. Oh, I pulled it out of his mouth. He almost got it again. This is the toughest worm I've had yet. Oh. He hammered that, and he's a little bitty guy. I mean, little bitty. He took it under like he was some giant fish. I mean, little bitty. It's got to be right there up against the bank. Ooh, check out that big old soft shell. He doesn't come eat. Do not want to deal with him. And that sun is baking. It's about time to call it a day. Oh, he was coming to get it. For this little pond. Oh no. Oh, it's a rock. Okay, good. Whew. I thought I hooked him for a second. He is not wanting to leave, is he?
That was a ton of fun. Now, even though there weren't a lot of big fish, there was still a lot of fish catching in this short period of time that I was at because it just got too hot. So I'm packing up to leave, but using worms is the easiest way to catch fish, period. And if you want to learn how to have even more fun, and that's by using worms on ultralight gear, check out the video down below me, and I cannot wait to see you there.